Uja, Uja, Uja. Greetings to all of you who are joining me live and those who will watch this as an archive. Uja is a vitality greeting. It's a way of saying greetings, but also it's sending you vitality, that life force energy that we need to keep us going and moving forward in this life. And so I also want to say Mer, which I also put in the chat, Aki, and Hatep, which is divine love, divine joy, and divine peace. So I am excited to present this final talk on Ma'at, at least in this Ma'at series. This was basically a focus on the 42 precepts of Ma'at. And the last show was the conclusion of the transliteration and translation of the glyphs. And tonight is the bonus night where we will go over those glyphs that really don't quite fit anymore. And I've taken the liberty to replace those particular precepts with ones that we really need today. And so hopefully we will begin to adopt those and incorporate those into our lifestyle as well. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Give me just a second because I added my video tonight, so I have to get this going. So let's see, what do I need to do here? Move that there. Then, okay, so I am going to, let's move this out of the way. Okay, can someone in the chat let me know? Greetings to everyone who joined. I appreciate your time and your energy. Can someone just let me know if you can see my screen? It should say Maat Philosophy. And I think I'm going to switch them. Let's see. Can someone let me know if they can see my screen? Okay, good. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into tonight's talk, the bonus talk. And we will go ahead and look at these precepts. So we have on, which we all know by now is no or not. We have nek, which is to copulate. We have eh, which is I or me. We have ha, which is husband. And we have hameti, which is wife. And so this is precept 21. And if you listen, I can't remember which talk that was in, but it was one of the precepts that other translators had pegged as a duplicate. And I, working with it, I felt like it was almost like a placeholder for the complement to 20, because 20 was, I will not, it was written for a male. So it was for Ani. And then I felt like we could use 21 for a female. So that's what I did. And so it's, I will not, let's go with your, I will not have sex with a man that is married. So 20 was the reverse of that for Ani. And this is 21, which brings balance and equanimity to 20. And if you have any questions tonight, because we are going to have a Q&A. Put your questions in the chat, and at the end, I will scroll through them and find them so that we can go over them. All right. So precept 34 was a precept that did not really fit anymore. So this is another one that I changed. So we have an, adi, which is do, commit, cause. A or is I or me. Then we have shanti, illness, sickness, incantations, right? So we're talking about curses and spells or harm. Also, this construct of obstructing. And so I added this. So we have ma'ati, which is righteousness, just, and truth speaking. And then we have the determinative for men and women. And I guess I should have put what the old one was, but they're there, so you can go back if you want to see what the old one was. So this one is, I will not, have not, curse. Well, I will not curse, obstruct, cause illness, sickness, or harm to the righteous, just, and divine, truth-speaking men and women. And I think I know what this one was. This one replaced I have not cursed the king or queen. And I talked about in the previous talk, or the talk where we went over 34, that the Nusut or the Nusut Biti, the leaders of ancient Kemet were also spiritually inclined. So they were pretty much priest and priestess in their own right. And they went through the purification process so that they can lead the people from a place of Ma'at. And so it was very important to have a precept like that during that time to protect the righteous leaders. And so since we all know today, we don't really have righteous leaders, right? We have leaders of Isbet and chaos. I felt like it would be a good idea to transform or transfer this precept to the people that are standing up against unrighteousness and who are promoting Ma'at. A lot of times those people are martyrs, and we've seen what happened to the martyrs. Okay, Anel, thank you. The font is small. Okay, so give me a second. Let me switch my screens, and then it should be better. So let me pause this. Let's swap this. And let's come out of that. Do that. Just look at that for a sec. And then let me swap. Okay. Does that look better? Okay, let me do this. That there. Okay. All right, that should be better. Can someone let me know if that looks better? I don't know if anyone can see it. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Okay. Well, we'll just leave it like that. Hopefully that's better. It should be larger now. Uh-oh. Okay. So going back to that precept, the modification. So it's important that we begin to engender that type of ideology, right, into our culture, because we have to create a mindset to protect those who actually stand up against unrighteousness. And right now in this society, there's a fear factor. I can even speak for myself. I have to overthink sometimes what I'm going to say on this platform because my video may be removed. Actually, one was removed because I said something, I said that I can't repeat what I said, but it was regarding COVID. And so I have to go back now and modify that video and repost it. So there's a lot of, concern now about standing up against unrighteousness in this society where unrighteousness is, it's the main item on the menu of the day. And so, we want to think about our ancestors, our martyrs, those who actually died fighting. And so that's why that precept is very important. And I hope, again, that we begin to incorporate that precept into our lives in the way that we think. There's so many people that lost their lives as a result of, again, trying to stand up for what was right, stand up for Ma'at. And we want to continue to encourage people to do that. And this is a website, ourmartyrsday.com. I want to make that like a movement where we have that day, December 4th, I think. Yeah, December 4th it is, to honor and perpetuate that particular precept, to honor our martyrs and to perpetuate that precept. Okay. So precept 39. And, which is no, not, Hatech or Hatek, to destroy, harm, injure, steal, to filch or obstruct. Pauti, stuff, matter, cake, bread, offerings, substance, items. Neteru, we translate this to gods and goddesses, but it's really divine forces or divine manifestations, in the form of like deities. But we'll keep it as gods and goddesses for now. Shepsu, the honored, glorified, righteous. And Aku, the spirit souls. So the precept will now read, I will not destroy, obstruct, or steal offerings or items offered to the divine deities or to the glorious spirit ancestors. And so basically I combine two precepts into one. And that's because we don't really have the temples anymore and the funerary offerings and things like that. Pretty much all of, Europe, or most of Europe, they've already robbed all of the, the temples and all the offerings that were set aside for the Neteru and things like that. We know what they did in Kemet. They took they took everything pretty much. And so that precept, as it was, don't really apply anymore. But today, however, we do have remnants of practitioners of African traditional religion. And so I underline obstruct because even in the Yoruba community, right, they have their practices, and there have been movements to try to obstruct them from like getting live animals and things like that, things that they need to do their sacrifices and things of that nature. Um, and so we want to kind of like think about those things as well, because that's another pressure, right? Another way of forcing people not to practice African traditional religion in the way that they see fit, in the way that's helping them to transform. So that's why I didn't totally eradicate this particular precept. And also, the hope is that we will restore and even expound upon the ways in which we communicated with those aspects of the divine manifesting as the Neteru and our spirit guides and our Shepsu Aku, our glorious spirit ancestors. From my experience, one of the main reasons why we suffer as African people or African descendants is because we have lost touch with our African traditional religions. And we've lost touch with the way in which we used to communicate with our ancestors. And a lot of it is based on fear because of the things that we have been, of course, indoctrinated into. And so I just wanted to, give the visual that in spite of all that we have been through, our deities, our Neturu, our ancestors, our Shepsu Aku, which are those who lived a purified life and those who went on to become enlightened beings, those who lived in Ma'at, who were there to assist us. And I can speak from experience. When we tap back into that frequency, they can assist us in overcoming all of these things that are stacked against us. And really, there's no other way for us to defeat the enemies of Ra except through tapping into those elements and those manifestations of Ra that are created and designed to do battle against the enemies of Ra. And so we have the Neturu, images of the Neturu on the left, and then some of the Orishas on the right, and then we have the Shepsu Aku. And if you have ancestors that were enlightened, you want to tap in, you want to work with them because they have powers. They can actually help you deal with these mundane situations, right? I'm speaking from experience. All right, precept 40. And ta, to make, to give. I, me. Kenfu or Chenfu, depending on whose interpretation we're going with. Kenfu resonates with me. Sacrificial cakes or offerings. To Shen, to conjure. Hecha or Heka, bad, wicked, dirty, evil. Aku, damned souls or spirits. And the Aku, we saw in the other one, was glorious light spirits, right? But that was the Aku without this glyph here. So this glyph here changes this. It keeps the aspect of the deceased, right? Spirits, those that dwell in the spirit realm, but not the enlightened ones. Instead, we're talking about the ones that fell. And so the translation is, I will not make offerings to or conjure wicked, evil souls, spirits, or forces. And I've talked about, what's going on in mainstream media in previous talks, right? We know that this is something that is spreading very quickly and rapidly across the country and probably across the world. I don't know. But a lot of people now are dipping and dabbing into witchcraft and Wiccan and all of these different things. And they don't understand what they're doing. They don't, have the proper rubric to delve into these things from a high vibratory way or from a Ma'atian way. And so they're actually creating more unnecessary strife in their lives, and by extension, in the lives of others. And so there is a movement. I mean, there's always been this underlying essence in the American culture of, demonic worship, right? This whole Luciferianism construct, it's been there, and I've shown that in previous talks, right? That it's essentially a part of the government in which we serve, right? So the Lucifer, Satan, non-purified set, right? That's essentially what we're talking about, right? Has many names. It's the construct is considered an enemy of Ra, as they serve the will of Apep. And Apep is the force behind Isfet, right? The force behind dissolution, destruction, and chaos. Kemetic text makes reference to there being fiends, which are evil, wicked spirits, souls, demons, people, forces of Apep. And so it's not about whether or not we believe in these things or not. That's really not relevant. Those things do exist. And a lot of us are under the influence of some of these because of the things that we engage in, even in the form of entertainment, the music. There's satanic subliminal messages in a lot of the rap music. And I've brought that up in previous talks, in the television shows and things of that nature. And so we want to start thinking about these things, and we need precepts like this, right? Modification of precepts to help, especially with our youth, to understand, what they should be dipping and dabbing into and what they shouldn't, and understanding the implications behind what they're doing. And so this picture is the depiction of um, the serpent, Apep, and this is the cat. I think it's Maat, I forgot the name, but it's symbolic of that leonine, that cat force, the second, the life force energy that we have to awaken within us to develop the capacity and the power to fight against unrighteousness within our own ego personality first, and then by extension in the world. And these types of organizations are busy at work, and they are making movies, and they're doing a lot to, again, seduce us into that lower vibratory frequency. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about Luciferianism, Satanism, and its correlation to Setianism, right? Which goes back to Set. And I've talked a lot about Set as that lower aspect of the self that is not purified. And the way that people are being seduced subconsciously to accept this and kind of like be okay, and in some cases actually idolize it. And so theistic Satanism, right? These are some of the things that they promote. And so, freedom, wisdom, strength, pride. And, if you hear those things, you're like, well, those are positive, attributes. What's wrong with that? But we want to be able to discern between the guise of something that's positive, right? Something that's being presented as positive, but behind it, it's promoting Isfet. And so I wanted to kind of like hone in on these four constructs that they promote, because a lot of people are being seduced, especially young people. Maybe the older folks, we don't know what's going on, but I know what's going on. So the seduction rises up out of the desire to rebel against the supreme divinity manifesting as Ma'at, the divine order, structure, and law established as the underlying fabric that supports creation. And, we've been talking about what Ma'at is. So let's look at freedom. So freedom within this context is the unbridled ability to do whatever one's heart, mind, or body desires, regardless of whether or not it supports creation, Ma'at, or dissolution and chaos, Isfet. And so this is what we're seeing, playing out in the world, right? If there's this desire to be able to do whatever I want to do, whatever I want to do, regardless of whether it supports creation or dissolution. However, we do know that we can't do whatever we want because we do have some laws in place. But yet, typically, the people that are practicing this on a high level, those are the people who are above the law. And those are the people who actually can get away with murder, mayhem, rape, all of those things, right? So that's the kind of freedom that they're talking about under this construct. And then wisdom under this construct is, you know, leaning upon one's own worldly lower intellect, independent of divine intellect, erroneously defined as wisdom. And so we have a lot of people that are really intelligent. They have high IQs, right? They're scientists and things of that nature. But it's still a lower intellect that they're operating from, right? Because they have not tapped into divine consciousness. And that's why you can have someone who's supposedly a genius still create something that is counterproductive to humanity, right? They can create inventions and things of that nature that have a negative impact on humanity, the planet, whatever. That's why we have all of these inventions today that's leading to the demise of us as a people and the planet. And so we want to be careful and understand what they mean when they talk about wisdom. And then we have strength, using the life force energy and will extended to us by the Supreme Divinity to defy the Supreme Divinity manifesting as Ma'at. So these, looking at that right there, right? Freedom, wisdom, and strength. You can align those things with Isfet and you can align them with Ma'at and they will look different. And so this is what we're talking about, being able to discern between how they're being used. So using the life force energy and will extended to us by the creator to defy the creator is definitely not Ma'at. And then we have pride, right? And we've already talked about precepts that spoke or gave us some direction about the prideful nature being problematic. And so pride in this context is the expression and demonstration of no remorse or shame for the above manifestations of ignorance and opposition against the Supreme Divinity manifesting as Ma'at. And, we see this in the streets today. There's a lot of groups and people who, they have in parades and things like that. They want to be proud. They want to exhibit their pride. And a lot of the things that they are doing are things that are against Ma'at. And they're saying, I'm proud of it. I don't want to hide this immoral behavior or these things that are creating dissolution or going against creation. I want to be proud of it. I want to display it. I want to promote it and allow it to spread. All right. Precept 41. And no, not saf or saf, to pollute. I, me, to ches or to kez, myself. So 41 will now read, I will not or have not polluted. So we're going to start, of course, with I will not pollute myself. And we're talking about mind, body, and soul. And this sounds like a really simple, straightforward precept. And it's probably one of the most difficult precepts to follow in this day and age. Most of the things we put in our mouth, right, in our bodies are polluting the body. Most of the things that we're putting in our mind is polluting the mind, and by extension, the soul. And so, I just wanted to do this comparison. And again, a lot of this stuff I already kind of like went over in the other talks, but we want to make a clear distinction between those types of things that we get into, right, that are creating dissolution and polluting our minds. And so, these things we all have had to deal with, right, for the most part, or have some exposure to. Um, and these things are presented as desirable. Like people want to go to the movies and watch these things and listen to these type of artists and, you know, learn the 48 laws of power and practice them, even though most of them are on Ma'at. And then we have a hard time getting people to want to sit down and watch shows such as this. And I do want to promote this show, if you haven't seen it, Out of Darkness. It's a beautiful documentary. Heavy is the Crown. You can get it on YouTube. You have to pay for it, but it's worth it. It's not much. I recommend that people watch this, pay for it, and have watch parties with your family and friends. It's really worth it. This is also another good one that's on YouTube. Uh, the ancient science, Egypt, the science of ancient Egypt. I think the of is hot over there. That's another really good one. And so, oh, and this is another good one. If you haven't seen Great Pyramid Cave 2019, this is a must. So, you know, the question becomes, how are we spending our time? You know, are we spending our time feeding our mind these types of things, or are we finding time to feed ourselves the things that's going to sustain us, the things that's going to allow us to cultivate a higher consciousness and begin to help heal this planet? Same thing with food, right? We know we've been conditioned to desire foods of dissolution, right, from the womb. A lot of our parents ate these types of things while we were in the womb, and then we come out desiring these types of things. There's been scientific evidence that proves what you eat while you're pregnant is what the child will desire when they're born. So if we start out with this, then the children will desire this and refute this. So we have so many options around us, right, to pollute ourselves. And so that's why that precept I find very important. And then we have the drug and alcohol pollution, right? We already know that this is the drug capital of the world. So one of the things that I wanted to spend a few minutes doing is talking about marijuana. As a spiritual practitioner, I find that in the spiritual community, surprisingly, a lot of people smoke marijuana, they take mushrooms, right? They get high and they're proud of it, right? A lot of people have no problem with these things and they will argue with you and tell you that it's natural. And they'll give you all of the good and positive attributes of it, but none of the bad. And so there are proverbs, and I've talked about these in the past, that speak against inebriation, especially for those of us who are sincere on our spiritual path. You really can't mix the two. And so until you come to that understanding, then your spiritual evolution is going to be limited. And so MRI scans show that smoking weed lowers the hippocampus activity, creating false memories, right? So the hippocampus is all about what we remember. And I've seen this happen with people that smoke, a lot of marijuana as well. Two sides to marijuana research, right? So we have the beneficial effects. There's evidence that cannabis can help patients with nausea. Most of us know about that, glaucoma and chronic pain. Some researchers are developing drugs derived from marijuana to treat severe epilepsy. And then most of us don't know about the adverse effects. So many participants experience cannabis withdrawal syndrome, which can cause weight changes, aggressiveness, and depression. And that's important because one of the things that many people have told me over the years is that they are not addicted to marijuana and that it's not addictive, but most of them never stop. And so it's good to see that scientifically it is addictive. Reduced consumption of cannabis lessens anxiety and improves cognitive functioning. So this is a really big one because another reason why a lot of people tell me they smoke, especially in the conscious and spiritual community, is they say it reduces their anxiety, right? And and it allows them to see things and think clearer, and all of those things. And it's telling us here that it actually, am I reading that wrong? Reduce consumption of cannabis, lessens anxiety, and improves cognitive function. Okay, yeah, it's telling us that as reduce that and move away from that, you will actually have those things that you believe marijuana is allowing you to have. And then we have long-term heavy cannabis use can result in memory impairment. And then over here, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how does THC affect behavior. It depends on where the CB receptors are in the brain. And, one of the things that I learned in college was that when you take drugs, they hijack your brain receptors. And that process within itself is detrimental to the brain. And so marijuana does that as well. And so I just want to encourage people, especially people who are on the spiritual path, to reconsider, smoking marijuana. If you're doing it, I want you to see it from a more Maatian perspective. And believe it or not, breaking away from that and continuing your spiritual work will allow you to have authentic spiritual experiences that you wouldn't have otherwise. They will exceed whatever experiences you think you're having as a result of smoking marijuana. And so it shows here the different things the different parts of the brain that's affected um, by the THC. And so, that's there. You can, read all that, go online, do your own research. But as you can see, there's quite a bit of negative side effects of smoking marijuana. I don't want to pontificate, I just want to share. All right, we got some major misconceptions. I talked about some of them. I just want to do some bullet points, right? That it's not addictive. It is very addictive. That it's safe, has no negative health effects. It's all there now. It's okay to do around children. I've seen people do it with their children, with their teenage children. It does not impair judgment, and that it increases mental awareness. And so we saw the data that refutes that, and that it heightens spirituality. So that's the one that I hear all the time, and I'm like, I just kind of like go, it's like it all depends on, I guess, what you're trying to get out of spirituality. But again, it's the facts are there. It's there. So hopefully people who are smoking marijuana will reconsider it since they're about evolving spiritually. And then we got the hallucinogens, right? That's another big thing right now, especially among the young people. They tell me all the time. I do mushrooms, and they kind of like talk about mushrooms like marijuana. They're good, there's no problem. But a lot of people, they don't realize that they become dependent on the side of the mushrooms and those types of drugs to feel normal or a sense of normalcy, because we are living under so much tension and stress. That is why the drug industry is so lucrative. If we remove the tension and the stress, right, and we put my eye in place, there's no need to constantly check out. And I can understand why people have to check out, because there's a lot of stuff going on. So that's why I say I'm not pontificating. I understand that some people, if they don't smoke some marijuana or take a magic mushroom, they might off themselves or off somebody else because of the amount of stress and the amount of degradation in society. But we want to promote that there are alternatives and that we can engage in a spiritual lifestyle and we can engage in a Maatian lifestyle, and it will help us. I can speak from experience. I almost lost my mind. There was just things that I had to deal with in this lifetime that almost broke me so many times. And I was really glad that I grew up in a household where people did drugs and grew up around uncles and aunts that did drugs. And it gave me such a distaste for drugs because I hate the way it affected them. But had I not had that disdain, I would have been a drug addict, because the pressures in my life was just too overwhelming. And so I can understand it, but I want people, again, to understand that there is a higher way that we can deal with these stresses. And my art is definitely a good way. Then we have spiritual pollution. So I wanted to say, no one else can eat, drink, think, or sleep for us. So why would we believe that someone or something else can absolve us of our fetters or sins? And so I'm saying these things to lead up to something, even for the conscious community or the spiritual community, because a lot of times when people break away from Christianity, they think they are no longer being affected by this kind of thinking. But I'm going to show you that a lot of people still are. And so we all know that in this culture, this is the ethos, right? This construct of this male white God. And right, this is spiritual pollution. And for even for those of us who try to pull ourselves up out of this, a lot of it is still affecting the way in which we move spiritually, right? The way in which we deal with our ancestors and deal with oracles and things of that nature, or even if we deal with those things, right? Because we still have some fear factor tied into going too far away from, this Christian construct. And so, we also have the Islam, right? We have a lot of our people that are practicing this as well. And there's a lot of anma'at that's going on in that spiritual practice as well, right? I already talked about this in a previous talk. So we have to begin to see how the spiritual pollution is still kind of like getting at us in these subtle ways. And we want to definitely start putting things in place to try to reverse this, right? One of the things that I have noticed in dealing with people who are on the spiritual path is that they are also still kind of looking for someone else to absolve their fetters for them, right? A lot of people don't want to do the work. And this is why you have not only pastors and bishops that have these football stadium size churches where all of these people pour in, right? They know that they're unrighteous, like Eddie Long, and they will still show up and give their money and support. It's because of this, because they are lazy. They don't want to do the work. And there are people now out there who are calling themselves Kemetic priest and priestess, high priest and high priestess, who are telling you that they can lay hands, they can do things, they can align your chakras, your energy centers. They can do all these things for you. And a lot of people are flocking to them. And I see what they're charging some people. I'm like, wow, people will pay a lot of money if subconsciously they can feel like someone is going to do the work for them. And save your money because at the end of the day, you have to do the work. Even if somebody does something for you, even like when I do Reiki on people, they can feel really good after that session, but you're going to go back to who you are, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. You have to do the work. So all of those things that are in your subconscious and your unconscious that led to your dis-ease and discomfort and your energy centers being closed, if you don't go in and do the work, they're going to close back down. So I'm encouraging people, right, to take this concept and really play with it and see where it sits within them. Even in the Kemetic tradition, I have had to leave temples because I watched the high priest or priestess, I'm gonna say, or straight up get tore up from the floor up after a spiritual conference. I was in shock and awe. I mean, they brought out the weed. They were smoking marijuana with some of their priests, some of their students. They were drinking, and I mean, got tore up from the floor up. And I was like, oh, this is what Malcolm X must have felt like when he found out some of those things about Elijah. I was like traumatized. And they have people that follow them. and people follow them and support them because of this idea, right? I, I don't have to do all that. I don't have to do that much work because my spiritual teacher isn't even doing all that, all that work. So a lot of people, like I said, they're gravitating towards these type of spiritual leaders. Some of them, like I said, are Kemetic priests or priestess, and they are leading people down a deeper hole. So if you are following a teacher, or you have taken classes, or you are working with teachers or spiritual preceptors or whatever, and they are displaying Ma'at behavior with no apology, then that is a reflection of you and where you are in your spiritual journey. Because you're not going to be attracted to an unauthentic teacher unless you are an unauthentic student. And this is why the authentic teachers don't have a lot of students, or people throwing money at them, because they're going to tell you have to do the work. Okay, precept 42. And sa, to pollute, I, me, ku, others. I will not pollute others, mind, body, soul. So I did not add, I could have put these two precepts in one, but I wanted to separate them because they both are very important, especially in this day and age. And I kind of like talked about it a little bit with the spiritual teachers and leaders that are still engaging in a lot of Ma'at behavior with no desire or no attempt to resolve it. And in ancient Kemet, there's no way on earth you would have been a Kemetic priest or priestess if you had not mastered all of Ma'at. In this day and age, we take liberties because the way that we get initiated is not like it was in ancient times, right? Actually, there's Kemetic scripture that speaks to the true initiation happening in the duat, or happening in the spiritual realm. And a lot of people who are Kemetic priests and priestess, they can't speak to that. They don't really know what that means. They can't say that they've experienced that, right? And so people who are in those leadership positions, or putting themselves in those leadership positions, they have to be really careful, because they are going to be held responsible, right, for those souls that they misled, that they polluted. So some ways to filter promoting, teaching, creating, supporting, administering things, both tangible and intangible, that goes against Ma'at, right? Because it's not just those teachers. We do it on an individual level as well, right? We got to think about, what kind of companies do I work for, right? That's something that's very practical. I've had job offers from companies that, because of who they were and the things that they did, I just turn down. I wouldn't even apply for the job. I've had like recruiters say, "Hey, I got this job. You're perfect for it." Blah blah blah. And I go look at the company. I'm like, no way. So I work for companies that are ethical, right? For the right, companies that are not doing adverse things that are going against Ma'at. So these are things that we can consider. That's very practical. What types of businesses and companies and organizations do I support? What kind of information do I share with others, including social media? What kind of work do I do? Right? Is my career, is the work that I'm doing, contributing to Isfet or Ma'at, whether directly or indirectly? What type of ideologies and constructs do I promote verbally or otherwise? What kinds of music do I play loud enough for others to hear? This is important, right? There's times when I'm out in the street, I'm in my car, and somebody pull up alongside me and they're blasting stuff that is so degraded. I can't believe that somebody would even say those things and put them on an album or whatever, digitize them. And they're playing it so loud, and I can't stop those things from going into my ears. And it's just like, wow, talk about degradation. So, are we playing music like that? Music that's promoting on Ma'at? What types of things do I attempt to socially influence others to think, feel, or do? Again, we're just taking these precepts and we're bringing them home. We're trying to make them real and practical, right? And so I already talked about this for spiritual teachers, priests, priestess, and leaders, all those titles. What type of examples do I set? That's very important. It's not about what I say, it's about what I do, right? If you see me doing a presentation like this, and then you see me post some scantily clad pictures on social media, that's a conflict of interest, right? I'm definitely not authentic, and I'm sure those pictures would probably get more likes and views than these videos because that's what we're dealing with, right? We're dealing with the grain. The grain is degradation, and we're trying to go against the grain. All right. Well, that concludes the additional or the modified precepts. But I did want to also share this with you all. Ma'at doesn't end there. Ma'at is just not the 42 precepts. Ma'at is a philosophy. So there's a whole teaching around Ma'at, right? You could spend years studying and working with the energy of Ma'at, right? Those of us who are really sincerely working with the energy, and if you have an altar and things like that, you can really start working with this energy and in a very special way, and it will help guide you to do things in the world, right? To promote Ma'at in some of the most simplest ways in your life. So I wanted to share chapter 125 of the Pert and Haru wisdom text because I find this to be very beautiful. I have lived by righteousness and truth while on earth. I live in righteousness and truth. I feed upon right and truth in my heart. I have done what is required to live in harmony. And the Netaru are also satisfied that I have worshipped rightly. I have done Netar's will. I have given bread to the hungry, water to the thirsty, clothes to the clothless, and a boat to those who were shipwrecked. I made the prescribed offerings to the Netaru, and I also made offerings in the temple to the glorious spirits. Very beautiful. It talks about how we, the things that we can spend our time doing to promote righteousness on earth and within our own being. A lot of times when you start talking to people, you tell them to just turn off the television. They like, they're like, what? I work 9 hours. I get home. I just want to sit down and de-stress. And it's a matter of reconditioning yourself. Like, am I really de-stressing? No, you're actually adding to the stress if you're not tapping into those things that's going to alleviate the stress from the day. And watching television, especially watching degradation, is not that. And when you are serious about transformation, you don't have time to do those things, right? And the more you spend your time tending to your spiritual needs, the more you don't even desire to get plugged in to society, right? You're no longer just flowing with the masses. So in conclusion, in summation, Maat philosophy is so much. All right, I wanted to take this from Egyptian Mysteries Volume 1 by Muwata Ashby, who was my preceptor for a long time. All right, a system of values prescribing a way of life that is based on divine order, truth, and justice, which was developed in ancient Kemet, Africa, a spiritual symbol as well as a cosmic energy or force which pervades the entire universe. Ma'at is the path to promoting world order, justice, righteousness, correctness, harmony, and peace. Ma'at is also the path that represents wisdom and spiritual awakening through balance and equanimity, as well as righteous living and selfless service to humanity. Ma'at encompasses certain disciplines of right action that promote purity of heart and balance of mind. And so these 10 shows, I encourage people to watch them over and over. I actually watched them. I watched some of them over and over because it will help to make Ma'at a reality, right? It will make Ma'at practical. It will make Ma'at unfold in our lives, and by extension in our families, in our communities, and then throughout the world. So more to the summation of Maat philosophy is instruction on how to cultivate morality into all aspects and areas of life. It is a rubric for cultivating social health and order. Engenders and supports peace, harmony, and prosperity. Supports mind, body, soul health, right? Declarations or confessions of purity that one may recite at the time of death if lived in accordance to. A means by which to purify the ego. A means by which to develop good character, which is called Iwe Pele in the Yoruba tradition. And it's interesting because they're in the Yoruba tradition, as a practitioner and an initiate. I didn't go to the priesthood level, but I didn't see a rubric for how to manifest Iwe Pele. And actually, I saw a lot of egoism, a lot of clashing of egos. There's a lot of good as well. But without that rubric, without the instruction on how to manifest Iwe Pele, most people don't even attempt, right? And a lot of times people just go to the Babalawo or to the priest or priestess and try to get help when there's a problem. And a lot of times, when they go, they're told, like, there's some things that you got to modify in your character or in your life, and that they don't want to hear that. They just want to know, how can I fix this problem? Are you gonna help me with this problem? Right? So Ma'at is a very important tool. I don't care what tradition we're practicing. Ma'at has to be ingrained and embedded in it. And so Yoruba practitioners, if you want to develop Iwe Pele and become a Shepsu Aku, become an Orisha, right? When you transition, you need Ma'at. It's a rubric for how to become divine, or what some like to call godlike. Dua Ma'at. And as we get to the end of this, I wanted to bring this back up, right? Why is living in Ma'at a challenge, right? Why can't we just hear this stuff and be like, I got it, right? And it's because we have two opposing forces occupying the same space. And our Kemetic ancestors depicted it as this. You have Set, right? Got your hand backwards and everything. And then you have Heru. And they're both, pulling you in opposite directions. And we have to understand the nature of our ego, the nature of Set, so that we can tame it and purify it and get it to work on behalf of the higher self. Okay? It's not going to do it automatically. It has to be nurtured. And Ma'at helps to nurture the ego so that it can work on behalf of the creator. And so the lower three energy centers, a lot of people are familiar with them now, but they don't know that the Sefket it correlates with basic survival, but also our thought process, right? Our programming. The second one is also pleasure, not only pleasure, but also our feelings and our emotions, also our subconscious. And then our third one is power and will. And I did a talk on this, and I talked about the dynamic between these two. And so the lower part of the personality is really designed to kind of like govern our basic mundane way of living. And it's not until we begin to tap into the higher aspect of living that the soul, that's when the soul can start to rise and flourish and then start to gain control over how the ego is utilizing the lower energy centers. And so the higher energy centers, right, we have desire. That's why the heart, when you look at henna, I think it's the henna papyrus, right? And you see where the Amit monster is biting, right? It's biting between the fourth energy center and the third energy center, symbolizing that the person did not master their desires, that they continue to, throughout life, they dwelled in lowly desires, lower desires. And so when the person starts to desire righteousness in Ma'at, then this upward movement begins to happen. And then that person does not have to reincarnate into this lowly existence that we call life, right, on earth. They can reincarnate on a higher vibrational frequency in another existence. There's so many different life forms and ways in which we can exist. And so I just wanted to share that so that we kind of like get in alignment with understanding why this isn't that easy, and we need guidance. And so these two opposing forces occupying the same space, they are meant to be complementary, but we have to develop the capacity to do that because we did not incarnate into a society that teaches us that. So we have to go learn it on our own. And I love to share the Kemetic iconography and pictures. And so you will see images where Heru is like, he has to subdue Set and say, sorry, you can't continue to control control both the body and the soul. And so it symbolizes overcoming the negative nature of Set, right? Dwelling on those three lower energy centers within the personality. And then what happens is Set doesn't die. The ego doesn't die. We need the personality to carry out divine will. And so you have Set and Heru tying the knot, right? This is the symbol, one of the symbols for Smai or Sima, which is essentially the root of the construct of yoga, tying the knot between the lower and higher self. And Ma'at is the means by which this occurs. That is the way this happens. That is the way this happens. And then, as a result, Asar, the divine self, is restored as Ra incarnate. Okay? So, Ma'at helps us here so that we can get here and ultimately here. So it shouldn't be taken lightly. And then what happens is the ego, it no longer works on behalf of APEP, because before it's working with APEP and all the demons and all the imps and all the negative forces. But once it's been purified, it actually sits in the boat with Ra, fighting the enemies of Ra, those things that would create dissolution, right? Dissolve life. Just as Heru does. And so our ancestors did a very marvelous job. I mean, we still can't fully unveil all the things that they encoded in a lot of the paintings and writings. But this is, very beautiful to me, because you see both the soul and the personality working on behalf of the creator. And that just makes me, I love it. That's all I can say. All right. So I've brought this up, but I want you to take away this. It's important to use your witnessing consciousness to help you in your efforts. We have to tap into this. And what is the witnessing consciousness? If I told you to say 1, 2, 3, but don't open your mouth and say internally, there's a part of you that heard you say it, but not audibly, right? Audibly, not through the ears. So that inner ear, that inner witnessing aspect of you is your witnessing consciousness. It's always there. It witnesses everything you do, you think, you feel. It knows everything there is to know about you. But we can't tap into that unless we are silent, right? You don't hear yourself say 1, 2, 3 internally until you say it internally, right? Silently. And so we have to spend time, right, tapping into that. That's why, we say turn off the television, turn off the radio, start going inside if you want to evolve spiritually. So using our moon consciousness, right, that witnessing consciousness, we want to be able to identify and remember those precepts, right, that we have violated, and we want to start working on correcting them. I gave a lot of information on how you can go about doing that on just about all of the precepts. Use the hidden aspect of your own mind that bears witness to negativity stemming from you and through your thoughts, feelings, desires, speech, and actions to identify your APEP contributions, right? APEP is the totality of unrighteousness. Begin gently working to transform the negativity into positivity, right? No need to be all stressed out about it. Just start making those little changes. These will prove helpful when moving in alignment with Maat. And so if you have enjoyed this series and you would like your own 12 by 18 laminated poster of these modified and transliterated and translated precepts, you can order it at shemsurah.org at our store. And every time you spend money or donate, it all goes to help us continue spreading this divine light. We are a nonprofit, 501c3. So you can go ahead and get that. And then we have some upcoming events. If you are in Texas, we have our annual Kemetic Reiki Level 1 class coming up. And that will be at the end of this month. Registration is still open. And we have extended the 185, the early bird special, to the 14th. So you can still get it for 185. And then after that, it goes back to 225. And then in November, we have Healing the Inner Child. This is a free 9-week group, a web group session, and it will be focusing on transforming adults, transforming our childhood trauma. And this is very, very important for those of us that are actively working on overcoming some of those things that are still giving rise to some of those things that happen in our past as children that are still giving rise to obstructions in our personality as adults. And with that, I say big dua. I am going to check the chat and see if there's any questions. If you have any questions, you can go ahead, or even comments. If you've been watching the series or some of the series and it's been useful to you, you can put your comment in here. I'm just going to see if there's any questions. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing time and space with me, and all of the comments that's in the chat. I appreciate you taking time to put in comments. I pray that Ma'at continue to guide each of us, and that Ma'at continues to rise up so that we can heal and save this planet, save ourselves, and make it a more harmonious environment for future generations. Ankh, life, Uja, vitality, Seneb, health to each and every one of you. Hatep. Okay, I see a question that popped up. What is the first project? What is the first project about Reiki? Is that what you meant? Is the question correct? What is the first project about Reiki? I'm not understanding the question. Did you want me to go back to the talk about the upcoming class? That's for Hoya Maris. What is it? Okay. All right. So Reiki is in itself is a Japanese term that speaks to the art of using the life force energy as a healing mechanism. So we all have um, vortexes or vortices within our body. We all have an energy field around us. Everything everything in this world is vibrating on a frequency. Even the things that we believe are inanimate, you know, scientists are now discovering what spiritual people knew all along, that it's really not inanimate, right? There are atoms moving on a molecular scale. And so Reiki is tapping into the divine energy source to help people remove blockages in their own energy body. So there's a lot of information out there about Reiki. We do Kemetic Reiki, and so if you go to the website, and I'll put it in the chat, aratrareiki.com, you will find a lot of information about how Kemetic Reiki differs from what's considered modern day Reiki. And um, if you ever go to Egypt, I've been there a couple of times, and I show some on the website, you will see that Reiki was actually being performed there. And so I go back to the source um, to gather my knowledge, information, wisdom to teach Reiki. So Reiki 1, you learn about how to heal yourself, how to work on yourself, how to be able to feel your own energy vibrating through your own um, uh, being, right? We live on, we have a physical being, we have a astral being, and we have a soul being, right? So we want to be able to discern and feel the energy frequency associated with all three. And so level 1 teaches you how to begin to tap into your own energy and how to feel when you have blockages, discern what's causing the blockages, and begin to work on it. Most of the blockages are going to be based on the first energy center, which is our thoughts. So our thoughts give rise to feelings, and then our feelings give rise to what we perceive as our reality. So if that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and check out the website. I'm putting it in the chat now, and you can get more information. And you can also set up a 15-minute free chat with me, consultation, if you want more information. Thank you for the question. Oh, thank you, Ayoka, for your for your comment. It's a blessing to have my daughter on here, so I appreciate that because the youth are the way of the future. So we need to promote my art amongst the youth more, more now than ever, because the other entities, the evil and APEP entities, they're promoting. They're using all kinds of tactics and means to promote unrighteousness, and we want to get more people on board so that we can promote righteousness from an authentic platform, especially for our youth. If not, the world is not going to continue, because that's what dissolution is about. All right, seeing no more questions, I hope that this was beneficial to all, those who are on now and to those who will watch in the future. Again, please visit aratrareiki.com. Also, if you haven't already, please, I have to remember to say this, like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification button. All right, Mer, divine love to each and every one of you. Patap, divine peace.